Well, great. We've got a lot of folks here. We're ready to get going. I'd like to welcome everybody today. Dr. Kimberly, pleasure to have you today as well. Thank you for joining us. Looking forward to what you have to share. And I'm looking forward to talking about today's subject, because today we're going to talk about something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, which is marketing and how to market successfully so that you can have a successful practice. A couple of quick housekeeping items when we get started today. First of all, please keep your microphone muted unless you need to talk. And we'll, of course, be glad to take questions, be glad to interact. Looking forward to that. That's why we do these webinars. You're also welcome to interact on the chat, ask questions there. We will be getting to the questions. We will be answering everything we can. And other than that, just enjoy. My goal today is I want you to learn something practical that you can put into use right away and that will be a benefit and a blessing to your practice. All right, Dr. Kimberly, you're my feedback. Are you seeing everything okay?
Yep, it's all here.
Very cool. All right, let's get right into it then. We've got a lot of good material to cover. Today we're here because we're going to talk about health fairs and the AcuGraph Health Fair Success Formula. The goal is to quickly build a thriving practice. And I want to begin with this question. Suppose you were a practitioner, you were either a brand new practitioner, perhaps you've moved to a brand new city or a new state, perhaps you're fresh out of school, you've got no patients, you've got no leads, and you are trying to make a living. What do you do? How do you get those patients in the door? How do you get a practice started? Everybody here has likely faced that. Now, maybe a lot of us started out co-practicing with somebody else. Maybe we had a built-in supply of patients that way. But in the end, ultimately, almost every acupuncturist out there is in business for themselves. And as the hunting metaphor goes, you only eat what you kill. It comes down to you ultimately to bring in those patients. And whether you've got a brand new office that's just opened, or maybe you're trying to recover from having closed for an extended period of time during COVID, whatever it is, we could all use new patients. And unfortunately, too many of us tend to think a little bit too small in this regard. Here's what I mean. Tell you a little story, little known fact about me, as if anyone cared about my life. But years ago, before I ever got into healthcare, I was a business management major. I have a degree in entrepreneurship. And right out of school, I went into the mortgage business, and I was a mortgage loan officer, helping people get mortgages to buy homes, refinance homes. It was a commission-based job. And so the only way I would get paid is if I actually closed a loan, help somebody get a mortgage, the mortgage gets closed, I get a commission for doing the loan. And when I first started out, I got a desk at a mortgage office, and here's your desk and here's your computer, and there you go. 0 leads, 0 business. And so I started going around trying to talk to real estate agents and trying to talk to other people in the business, title companies and so on, trying to get some referral business. Of course, all of them already had referral relationships. They already had a loan officer they trusted, et cetera. And so I was really unsuccessful at getting new business. And, a month went by and I didn't have a single lead, not one loan, nothing. And I remember somebody asked me, hey, how's the new job going? How's the mortgage business? And I said, well, I'm working hard. I'm trying to get one. And it occurred to me how kind of sad and pathetic that sounded, that I was trying to get one customer. But how many of us are trying to get one new patient, one by one? How many of us, our marketing is focused on just trying to get a new patient in the door. And I don't want to put down anyone who's in that situation, but we're thinking way too small. When I was a mortgage loan officer, the successful loan officers that were making a living at that job, they were doing 20, 30 loans a month. they were closing a loan almost every day. And here I was trying to do one, and not really succeeding at that. So the first thing I want us to think about is, what's the real goal? Is one new patient really going to move the needle for your practice? What'll it take? 10 new patients? 20? 30? What can you expect out of one screening event? Or one health fair? I kind of use those terms interchangeably. Is 10 new patients going to do it for you? Is it realistic to think you can get 10 new patients? Is it possible? Is it probable? Can we help you get there? And how would 10 patients affect your practice? How would 20? How would 30? If you're going to dream, if you're going to put in the time, the effort, and the work to do a health fair, then my suggestion would be go all the way. Do it as successfully, as big, as loud and proud as you possibly can, and attract all the new patients you possibly can, and see if you can't really screw up your practice by having way too many patients. That would be a good problem for most of us to have. So why am I putting on this webinar? Well, honestly, over the years, I've noticed that nobody really likes marketing. That word marketing is kind of a dirty word. Everybody needs the marketing help. Everybody needs new patients, but almost nobody says, yeah, I'm excited, I'm going to do some marketing. Because let's face it, we went to school to do acupuncture, to do patient care. And we came out probably really unprepared for the marketing side of things, probably really unprepared for the fact that you've got a business to run and that nobody's coming through that door unless you take steps to bring them in that door. And you know what? Going around handing out business cards probably isn't enough. Getting your name out there probably isn't enough. Nobody cares what your name is. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. But the ideas that I want to share today actually work. I've literally watched these things save dying practices. I've watched these things kickstart brand new practices going from 0 patients to an absolutely full schedule inside of a week. It is amazing what you can do if you'll apply these principles and just put in a little work. And it's not the end of the world work. It's a reasonable amount of work for a huge return. If that sounds good to you, then let's talk about how to do it. Everybody needs new patients, whether you are an established practitioner, a brand new practitioner, and I've kind of, skewed my talk thus far to those people who are trying to start a new practice or who are trying to get a whole bunch of patients to get something going. But maybe you're an existing practitioner. Maybe things have just slowed down. Maybe things have gotten a little stale, and it's time to revitalize that practice. It's time to get back to where you need to be to reach your goals.
Hey, Adrian.
Yeah, go ahead.
You could possibly also be a new AcuGraph user and you're trying to bring in a whole new paradigm of patients you haven't seen before, right?
Absolutely. So it's like reinventing your practice under a new paradigm and a new way of treating patients. It's a whole new way of thinking. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And I guess the point is, no matter where you are in your practice, these principles will apply because new patients are the lifeblood of every practice. I doubt that there's very many of us that have enough maintenance patients to just put it on autopilot, show up for work, do the things, treat the people, go home, and it's automatically just going to continue that way forever. And now, if that's the situation you're in, congratulations, you're teaching the next webinar, and tell us how you did it. So what are you going to gain then? First of all, single focus of the webinar today. By the time we're done, I want you to be 100% confident that you can do a marketing event. You can do this. It can work. It's not rocket science. It's not brain surgery. You can do it and succeed. And I want you to attract 10, 20, even 30 new patients from a single marketing activity. Very doable. we're going to talk about how to do it. But wait, health fairs, that alone tends to take the introverted among us and scare us and say, wait, you mean like a health fair? You mean like set up a booth, like talk to people, like put myself out there? For some people, that's a little terrifying, and it doesn't need to be, because we're going to show you step by step. Yes, the single most effective way I've ever seen to bring in new patients, period, is to go out and do this. Now, who remembers the good old days of Yellow Pages ads? Do y'all remember the Yellow Pages? I bet half the people in this webinar are too young to even know or care. But when I started in business, these many years ago, what you did was you put an ad in the Yellow Pages, and it was super expensive. A good size ad, a display ad, you were paying several $100s a month, even $1,000 a month or more for this ad in the phone book. And that ad was your big marketing investment, hoping that when people were thumbing through the phone book, they would see your ad and they would decide, this is the one I'm going to call because I like what their ad says. And so there you were, competing with everybody else, all of you lumped together. If it was acupuncture, then every acupuncturist in the phone book was right there on the same page, and you had to somehow stand out. And you would spend unholy amounts of money trying to stand out. You would make all this investment, and if it didn't work, if your ad was terrible, it didn't matter. You had to pay for that ad for the entire year of the contract, even if your phone never rang once. That was awful. Now, the Yellow Pages days are well behind us. Nobody's buying ads in the Yellow Pages anymore. I don't even know if they exist anymore. I think that a couple of years ago, they quit delivering phone books to my house, which is fine because I quit looking at phone books a few years ago, and so did you. But now you can take that kind of money that you would have been spending on that Yellow Pages ad years ago, take just a fraction of it, spend it on a single event that's well done, well tailored, and do a lot more. So one good health fair is worth an entire year of advertising. Keep that in mind when you're talking about your budget, talking about how you want to approach it. Now, the other thing you can do is public speaking events. We're not really going to talk about those today, but those are also very effective. And if that's your thing and you want to set that up, then public speaking is a great way to get new patients. And we can talk about that maybe in a future webinar. But the main point is that when you think about doing marketing, it can't be an afterthought. You have to be serious. You have to be intentional about it. Otherwise, it's just a hobby. So whatever fears you have about putting yourself out there and setting up a public screening event, let those fears go. Don't let fear be what controls you or prevents you from the success that you deserve. Now, I mentioned that most of us really need to do marketing for our practice. Here's a survey that was taken a few years back, and I've presented these results before in some of our trainings, but the average acupuncturist far and away sees between 0 and 10 new patients a month. How many acupuncturists see more than 10 new patients a month? About 16%. More than 20 new patients, about 2%. And beyond that, it's ridiculously small numbers. Most acupuncturists don't get very many new patients. But new patients, as I mentioned, that's the lifeblood. That's what keeps your practice prospering. That's what keeps the momentum going. You can't just run on autopilot. Same with the total number of patients seen in a month. 27% of acupuncturists see 10 or fewer patients in a month. Now that is a part-time practice. That's not paying your student loans off. That's not succeeding, and that's guaranteed working another job to survive. 28% of acupuncturists are seeing 20 or fewer new patients a month. Well, between 11 and 20 new patients a month. Or not new patients, but patients. Think about yourself. How many patients do you see in a month? Not new, but just patients overall. Do you have room for more? I don't want to belabor with the negative statistics, so I'll just show one other thing, and that is total personal income that acupuncturists make. Again, this was from a survey done a few years back, and 21% of acupuncturists were making less than $25,000 a year from their practice. And you can look at the numbers here, it goes on up. And to get into the 6-figure range where you can actually realistically pay your student loans and actually realistically afford to live, you're talking about 16% of all acupuncturists. Our goal is to get you into that range, and that is very attainable, even if you are not good at marketing. The good news is there's no shortage of patients out there. Lots of people want you and need you. Nearly everyone has an issue they want help with. And a little later, we'll talk about how to discover what that issue is, because they won't tell you if you ask them necessarily. Surveys have shown over and over that the majority of people would readily consider acupuncture to help with a problem if they thought it would help their problem. A lot of times they don't make the connection, though, that acupuncture can in fact help with the problem I've got, because they've got a paradigm in their head that's wrong. And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to fix that paradigm so that they come to you first, and so that they'll come to you at your trade show booth rather than making acupuncture compartmentalized in their mind as being this strange specialty that's only good for certain things. See, a lot of the problem we have is perception. And while we're talking about a trade show booth, the first thing we want to consider is the perception, the image that you are going to portray with your booth. Too many people portray an image like this, and too much of the public thinks about acupuncture like this. It's sandals and candles, it's all earthy and woo-woo and a little bit strange and out there, and it's more mystical and magical and maybe even religious than it is scientific or real. And that's what you've got to fight against. You don't want people to have ideas in their head that match this chart. All of these things are the sorts of things that people tend to think about when they think about acupuncture. The first thing they think about is, you're going to stick needles in my body. Of course, everybody goes there when you talk about acupuncture. And from that, you get all of these strange ideas, when in fact, you want people to have ideas and an idea map in their head that looks more like this. So when you're considering going to a health fair, you want to make sure that this is the image that you're portraying. That acupuncture is evidence-based, that it's well-researched, that it's effective, that it's mainstream, that it's recommended, that it's preventive, that you can trust acupuncture and you can trust your acupuncture provider. All of that goes into your booth. And we'll talk about how to design your booth in a couple of minutes. But first, you've got to choose a venue. And so the question is, what kind of patient do you want? Do you care what kind of patient you get? If maybe you like to focus on a certain topic, maybe you like to do women's issues, maybe you like to do sports injuries, maybe you like to do geriatrics, maybe you like to do pediatrics, whatever it is, whatever the specialty, you're going to want to start by being intentional and careful about choosing the event. If you only do one event this year, and let's be honest, many of you might not even do one, but if you are only going to do one, then make sure it's going to bring you the patients that you want. Now, I know that we've all had, we lost a year due to COVID. All the events got canceled, everything was closed, but we're seeing things largely open again, in-person events again. There will be, and there are, health fairs, corporate wellness events, specific groups that sponsor events. All kinds of opportunities are out there. And so if you're not sure where to look, start looking around your community. Talk with the Chamber of Commerce. Look around for specialty groups. There's support groups. There's practices, medical practices that sponsor and do certain types of events that are related to specific problems. There's all sorts of things. So look around your community, find out what's a good fit. And I guarantee there will be something that you can go and do. And so be a little intentional, spend more than 5 minutes. Unless you happen to live in a small town of 1,000 people, there's going to be something going on, even if it's the farmer's market. And I'm not kidding. You can set up a booth at the farmer's market and be wildly successful because there's people there and people have problems and you can help. Now, you got to keep in mind, though, that people are self-interested. I honestly want you to understand that folks do not care what you do. They don't. They only care about what you will do for them. It comes down to something called features versus benefits. And the story I like to use to illustrate this is there's this stereotype, and I'm just going to flog this horrible stereotype. And I'll admit it's a stereotype, but it fits. Guys have midlife crises, right? So you reach middle age, you're a man, maybe you've been, moderately successful in your career. Kids are getting grown out of the house. You've got perhaps a little bit of surplus cash. And what do? Well, you go buy the red sports car, the Corvette being the prototypical stereotype, right? Now, when Mr. Middle-Aged walks into the dealership to peruse Corvettes, the smart salesman isn't going to start pitching Mr. Middle-Age on, hey, you know what? This has 14-inch vented disc brakes with ceramic pads. Also, 4 valves per cylinder, dual overhead cams on that 5.7 liter turbocharged engine. Oh, and you know what? It's got rocker rollers on the camshaft. Well, everything I've told you may be true. And that's a lot of features. I'm telling you features about the car. But really, what you're looking for is benefits. And the smart salesman is going to talk to Mr. Middle-Age and say, sir, I can tell you're not the kind of guy that wants to look at the cheap junk. You didn't walk in here today to look at that. I mean, clearly you're here because you deserve something really special. I can tell by looking at you. I mean, you've been successful. Step on over here. Let me ease you into this convertible Corvette. And I want you to picture with me. When you go down the road in this, you can feel the wind in your hair, or what's left of your hair. You understand the biggest problem your wife's going to have with this car, sir, is the looks you're going to get from other women on the road. And I want you to be prepared for that. And your wife needs to understand that there's nothing to worry about. It's just a good looking guy in a hot car. I haven't yet spoken about a feature, but I've talked a whole lot about the benefits or the perceived benefits because this guy is out there wanting a certain ego trip, wanting to feel a certain way about himself. And by reinforcing that, that's how you make the sale. Now, none of us are slimy car salesmen, and we don't have to be slimy to talk about benefits and how you're going to benefit the patient's life. So a feature of acupuncture is that you stick needles in people. That is not the feature to sell. The feature that you want, or the thing you want to talk about, is the benefits, how it's going to change somebody's life, what they're going to get out of it, what you're going to do for them. Don't worry about how you're going to accomplish it. Don't talk about needles. That's never the point. So it's kind of like talking about acupuncture in general may not be the best approach. Maybe you don't even want to make acupuncture the focus of your booth because you've immediately scared away a whole bunch of people whose ideas about acupuncture come from television programs where you get needles in your face and pleasure in your base, or where you have this notion that they're going to get stuck with a lot of needles and it's going to be painful and it's going to be scary and it's going to be awful, but it's the price you pay to feel better. You want to get rid of that. Get past the needles altogether and instead focus on what it is that you're going to do. People change their behavior in a series of stages. You don't know what idea or what stage they're in, but you do know that 50% of the folks that pass by your booth probably just aren't going to be interested. And that's okay because 50% are going to be interested. So when you set up a booth at a health fair, the first thing you need to do is combat booth blinders. Booth blinders. The deal is that when people walk around a health fair, a trade show, perhaps you've been to them, and there's maybe booths on both sides, and everybody's trying to sell you something. And so you kind of stare straight ahead and you take little furtive glances left and right and just quickly ascertain, okay, I see a booth to my right. What is it? What are they selling? Am I interested? Do I want it? Is there something there for me? And you do all of that in a split second. So there's a 4-step process we teach for setting up your booth. That process is begin by interrupting. Interrupting means that the person that's walking by that glances at your booth needs to be interrupted by something that matters to them. It needs to be something eye-catching, something pertinent, a message that resonates with them. That will interrupt. That's all it takes, is just something shiny to catch their attention. Next, once they've been interrupted, they read what you've got. The interrupt is to catch the attention, and then they read, they ascertain, they judge, and they do that in a matter of a few seconds to decide whether to pay any further attention to your booth. So they've been interrupted because something caught their interest. They have paid enough attention to maybe read a couple of lines or look at the rest of what you offer and decide. And at that point, then they will either engage or not engage. And our goal is that once they've been interrupted and paid attention, we need to bring about engagement. And ultimately, once they've engaged with you in your booth, then they need to take action. And this is the 4-step process. When you map out your strategy for how you're going to do this marketing event, think about, how am I going to interrupt? How am I going to get attention? How am I going to engage? And how am I going to get action? The interrupt is where we'll start. And what you'll want to do to interrupt is you want bright colors, eye candy, pictures, images, not words. Images are what interrupt people. So they've got to see something that is engaging to them. So for example, if you are at a health fair that caters to athletics, then you're going to want to have an athletic-based photo, picture, display, something, and an athletic-based message. Then a relevant headline, whether you've got a banner, whether you've got a backdrop for a booth, whatever it is you are displaying, it needs to be relevant. So a general thing that says, hey, this is Adrian's acupuncture. That is not a headline and nobody cares. But if it's a sports healthcare, athletic healthcare based show, then, hey, injuries, trying to avoid it. And this one, this little banner that I've got here, this is kind of okay, but how could you make it better? How could you talk about bounce back from that injury, get back to playing fast, or fastest recovery available, or something along those lines that is going to cause people who have a sports injury or are worried about a sports injury to be interrupted and engaged. Hey, wait a minute, speedier recovery, get back on the field fast. Yeah, that's for me. Now I'm engaged. Now I'm going to read. I want to know what else. And keep in mind that it is always emotion that interrupts and engages people. You're going to get their attention because of what they feel about what it is that you're selling. That just is a fact. Again, getting into the selling language, all sales decisions are made based on emotion, not logic. Logic is how people justify the sales decision or the purchase decision that they've made. In my example about the guy buying the sports car, he's going to buy that car based on emotion, guaranteed 100%. And then he's going to use logic to justify it to his wife and explain why it was a good purchase, why it was a great deal, why it's going to appreciate in value, whatever logical reasons he has to explain to justify the emotion, he will. But ultimately, it's emotion. So people are emotional about their condition. If they're suffering, they're emotional about that. If they're emotional about their complaint and about being listened to and about being understood and about having an answer. So Focus on the condition, focus on the complaint, focus on showing empathy. And thus far, all we've done is we've talked about interrupting and engaging people. So some tips for booths that will do that. Whatever your display booth is, whether you invest $1,000 in a great big backdrop or invest $40 in getting a poster printed at the local print shop, whatever it is you're going to do, think about the following tips. Number one, make it big. It's got to get attention. It's got to interrupt people, and it's got to be graphic. So bright, larger than life, something that will immediately catch attention. Movement and sound is always helpful. People are curious. So visual and auditory curiosity is good. And this is where AcuGraph really helps. And lighting. If you're indoors, you've got to be well lit. The human eye, of course, seeks light. You don't have to be, lighting doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be creative, and there has to be something bright to catch people's eye. So whatever it is you're going to do, don't do it as an afterthought. Because if you put in a lot of time and thought into choosing the right venue and, what am I going to talk to people about and how am I going to present myself? And then the night before you're like throwing together, okay, well, I probably need a table and I should probably get a sign. You've already failed. This is the sort of thing you plan in advance, you think through, you pay a designer if you need to pay a designer. You go on Fiverr and you find somebody who will help you with your booth design. And maybe you end up spending a couple $100 on a designer, and maybe you end up spending a couple $100 on getting some things printed and some graphics done. But if that's the difference between getting no new patients and getting 10 new patients, spending that amount of money just isn't relevant. You do it. Okay, so while we're talking about interrupting and getting attention, let's talk about some real booths out there and identify some positives and some negatives. Just some pictures grabbed off the internet. What do you think? This is a booth. What's it about? What are they selling? More specifically, what are they going to be able to do for you? As you're walking by, is there something here that's going to get your attention, engage you, and emotionally connect you with something that you hope to gain from this booth? Looks like a big thing of candy. I hope to gain some candy. Or is that popcorn? I'm not sure. There's a big jar of something on the table, and maybe they'll engage me with my lust for chocolate, and maybe I'll stop by for a treat. But ultimately, that doesn't mean I'm going to do business with this booth. So what's it about? I see that there's a banner up there on the wall. I don't quite see what the banner is doing up there, but there's a banner in the front of the table, and that's never going to be seen. It's below eye level, and if anyone's standing there or walking by, you're not going to see that banner. There's not a lot of color. The table is very busy with stuff, and each of those things is small and detailed, and I've got to stop and I've got to look and I've got to read before I can even tell, what is this about? And is there something there for me? There is a huge plant, a lot of flowers there. And that's nice. It's pretty. I'm not sure what that does. It's just scenery. It's not going to interrupt me or engage me. Let's take a look at this one. First of all, we can immediately tell what these people are selling. Clearly, they're selling pediatric dentistry. We make kids smile. Got it. Split second, I understand. Split second, I can make a decision about whether this is applicable to me because the message was big, bold, and readily accessible. So I immediately know what the table's about. It's got a lot of color. It's got less busyness on the table. There's 2 or 3 items of interest, and some of those are products. And that may be interesting, particularly if I have children and I'm looking for products for children. But the tablecloth is not doing them a lot of favors. It's not disguising all the junk that's under the table. But overall, this one's doing a better job interrupting. We make kids smile. That's a nice thought. Who doesn't like to make children smile? But what could be perhaps a better a more specific message. When you think about pediatric dentistry, if you have kids, what are you looking for in a pediatric dentist? Making kids smile is nice in general, but my kids hate going to the dentist when they're little. And so what if this is the dentist your kid will love to go to? Or that's an idea that would be interesting. Wait, my kid's going to love it. Your kid will love coming here. That's interesting. How about make the dentist the best thing that happens all week? Well, that sounds a little over the top. Seriously? There's a lot of ways that they could engage me emotionally and connect with what are parents feeling that are in the market for a pediatric dentist. All right, here's another one. No idea what this booth is about. There's a table, there's a sign on the front. I can't tell what it is they're offering or what message they're trying to convey. There's a lot of clutter on the table. Nothing's organized. It's basically just, hey, take all our brochures, throw them all out on a table and sit there. And, you know, maybe some people come by and be bored enough to ask what this is about. If someone has to ask what this is about, you've already failed. They should never have to ask what it is you're offering and how it's going to benefit them. They must know that immediately at a glance, or you've already failed. So think about that and ask yourself that question over and over. If you're considering a booth design, what am I offering? How is it going to help? Put yourself in the patient's or the potential patient's shoes. Think about glancing at that. Do they immediately know what is this and how's it going to help me? If they don't immediately know that, then change it until they do. The one thing the one positive they have, they've got nice smiling people. That's good. That's always a given. But otherwise, that booth was a complete failure. Now, 3 common booth mistakes to make if you're doing a booth at a health fair. Number 1, since most acupuncturists aren't going to show up and do acupuncture at a booth, thank goodness, then often I've seen where, oh, come and get a free 5-minute chair massage. Great. The chair massage has nothing to do with acupuncture, nothing to do with how you're going to help these people with their problems. You're going to give them a back rub. It's going to feel good for a few minutes. You're probably not going to talk to them because their face is in a cradle, so they can't even interact with you. And they walk away saying, thank you. That little awkward because now they feel like they owe you something. So maybe they'll listen to a sales pitch or take a brochure, but you haven't sold them anything that tells them how they're going to benefit. If they come to you and see you in your practice, are they going to get a massage? Is that what you're about? So don't do the chair massages. Number 2, don't put out the weird acupuncture stuff. The little naked statues with the pictures of the acupuncture points. That's not the type of eye distraction that you want people to have. That's like talking about all of the features under the hood of the car that somebody's buying because it's red. They're buying it because it's red and because that's going to convey a certain thing and help them feel good about themselves, not because of what's under the hood. People aren't sold by the number of acupuncture points on the body. That's just a distraction. Take it away. And then 3rd, other things like burning incense, the candles, the various sorts of displays that you put out on your table to try to convey a certain feeling. Well, you're not here to convey a certain feeling. You're here to convey a message. And the message has to be very specific about a benefit to your patient. Stuff that doesn't convey a benefit just doesn't belong there. So get rid of it. People are much better off with a booth that is empty and clean and clear with a single, very clear message than they are with a table full of stuff that they think is neat and nobody else really cares about. Okay, now let's talk about engagement and action, because this is the heart of the matter. What will engage people with you? And what action do you want people to take? Once they've engaged with you, then what action do you want them to take? You've caught the eye. Now what? You need a hook. The hook is the thing that piques their curiosity enough to talk with you, to stay there, to spend time, to receive something from you. It's unique to you and provides real value. And this is where AcuGraph totally shines. because it's the most effective method I've ever seen for attracting prospects and turning them into patients. The hook is that you're offering a free evaluation, a free exam with this cool computerized piece of technology. Hey, 3-minute exam, and we'll find out the heart of that problem, whatever that problem is, whatever it is they stopped for at your booth. So that's the engagement. That's going to cause them to sit down, to give you their attention, which is the currency. That is the money, so to speak, that changes hands right now, is attention and time. If you can get them to give you some attention and time, then you've already almost won. So getting them to sit down, getting them to be graphed, offering them something valuable for nothing, that's the hook. Well, and why is it so effective? Number one, technology and trust. People like and trust technology more than they trust you. It's just a fact. Folks would rather look at their phone than interact with people half the time. And unfortunately, COVID hasn't made that better. We're all learning to interact again without wearing a mask. If you don't use the technology to interface with them, then unfortunately, you're out of date. But using the technology, it offers correct communication. It clears up misconceptions about acupuncture. It communicates something positive and understandable, and allows people to realize that whatever ideas they had in their head about acupuncture can be translated into something more effective, something that is scientific, that is technology based. Then AcuGraph translates what people feel in their body, the symptom or problem they're experiencing, into information they can act on to get a result. It's the bridge between, oh, I feel bad or I hurt, to here's how to fix it. And that bridge is what's missing. That connection is something that a lot of people don't get when they go to see their other type of practitioner. They go to the medical doctor, they get them some pills thrown at them. They've been to chiropractic, perhaps. They've been to other healthcare providers, perhaps. And oftentimes, nobody can tell them the heart of what's wrong. Certainly in the medical profession, mostly what you're going to do is try to cover up the symptoms. I'm going to throw some pills at that. We're going to throw some surgery at that, without actually saying, well, here's the actual cause. You may be the first person that can show them the cause, that can put a report in front of them that will show them, hey, here is where the energy is blocked, and here is how it's affecting you. And that explains why you're experiencing the problem you're experiencing. And guess what? I know how to fix that. We fix that energy blockage and we fix the symptoms. And people are immediately interested. Get me more of that. It motivates action. So also the fact that people get a report, that's the best advertising you've got, because it shows, you'll have other people see that folks are walking out with something tangible, a report in their hands, and more people want that. So they come to your table, they come to your booth because they want one too. And the report motivates action because the screening report that you're going to give with AcuGraph is only half of the meridians. And so the immediate hook you have is, come on into my office. I've set aside these days. We'll do an absolutely free evaluation, if free is the way you decide to go. You can come in for the full write-up and the full workup, and we'll tell you exactly what's wrong and whether this is something we'll be able to take care of for you. However you want to phrase it, the point is that you've got an immediate hook to get people to come see you in your clinic. Now, the target appointment rate at a health fair is about 50%. This is very achievable for the number of people that you graph versus the number of people that you make an appointment with. We commonly see numbers above 50%. So if over half the people that sit down in that chair will end up making an appointment with you, obviously it's in your best interest to get as many people to come sit down in the chair as possible. And the good news is that once you get started graphing people, that creates interest that attracts others, that they'll literally wait in line. Sometimes they'll wait in line for an hour just to get graphed. You got any other booth at that entire fair where people are waiting in line for an hour just to get what's offered? I guarantee you don't. That's the amazing thing that happens with AcuGraph at booths. So the goal then, whatever you're messaging, the thing to always point to is, hey, we've got this 3-minute exam. We'll find out exactly what's wrong, pinpoint the issues, and tell you what you can do about them. Anybody who has an issue or a problem, that's going to be attractive to them. So you need to think through your equipment for your booth. We talked about what to display, but you're going to need a table. You're going to need chairs. Do you want chairs for people while they wait? Obviously, you need your computer and your AcuGraph. You need a large computer monitor or a TV that is facing out toward the audience so that others can watch as this happens, because it's fascinating for people to watch. A printer is optional, but it's a great idea, because handing out the printed report is a really useful way to get more folks into your booth. And you need to have a way to make appointments. If you go to all this work and get people to sit down, to get graphed, to talk to you, and they leave without an appointment, then you've wasted your time and failed. And that's fine. Some will do that. But if you don't even have a way to make an appointment, you've planned to fail. So don't plan to fail. You need to be very intentional. You've just given them your time. You've just given them an exam. And now you're offering to give them some more. All you're asking them to do is show up. It's a very equitable trade. Have the appointment book. And frankly, you probably need an assistant, because there's nothing worse than sitting there at the health fair. You've managed to attract a whole bunch of people. There's 10 people in line waiting for you, and you're busy there talking, and you can't even pay attention to them, help them get ready, help them know what to do, answer questions. You need to have an assistant there. And the assistant needs to be trained that health-related questions are to be answered in an affirming way, but referred to you, and that the assistant's job is to help people get in line, to help them get an appointment, and so on. They're the ones making the appointments after you offer it to them. A practice flyer with a map, something they can take with them to show them how to keep their appointment with you. Sign-in sheet so that people can get on the list. That keeps them. So when folks show up and they say, hey, can I get this screening, this thing you're doing? Can you do me? Yeah, absolutely. Let me get you on the list. Tell me your name. Boom, right there. Cool. There's 3 people in front of you. If you just want to have a seat, we'll be getting through them. We're taking 5 minutes a piece, and you'll be up in no time. But signing them in commits them to stay and commits them to receive that exam. So consider your layout, consider the flow. How can you handle people? Where can they move? Where can they go? This is a basic 10 by 10 kind of a booth. There's all sorts of configurations that can work, but keep in mind, you will have a line, and people waiting in line need to have a place to wait. So if you can make it so there's a waiting area, that's going to be really effective. People will walk by, they'll see and hear. That's why you have the TV that's facing out. When they stop and look, then you've got an assistant or a helper or a spouse or somebody who's going to greet them, who's going to invite them, who's going to talk about, yeah, we're doing free computerized evaluations today. They're intrigued, they sign up, they take a seat, and then they receive their reports and they set appointments. Now, a few things to mention in how you talk about acupuncture and how you talk about AcuGraph. We mentioned earlier that acupuncture is not the route you want to go, and you don't want people's misconceptions reinforced. So instead, you might talk about acupuncture meridians or even energy meridians. And when people say, well, what is this test? What are you testing? You need to have something in your mind already that you're going to say. We're going to send a small signal through your energy channels. These are the primary conduits through your body. If there's a block or an imbalance, then the computer's going to pick it up and we'll see it on the screen. Something that'll answer the question, that'll help them understand what you're doing. Maybe something else. Your meridian system consists of more than 300 points and 12 meridians that connecting the points. Think of it like your body's computer network, and each point on your body is an access terminal. I'm going to test some of these access terminals and see if the information flow in your network is blocked somewhere. And if it is, we're going to talk about how to fix that. there's a lot of ways to talk about this. And so your assignment, to be prepared before your event, write down 3 to 5 of these bridge statements, scripts to explain when people ask the usual questions. So what is this you're measuring? What is this you're doing? Is this acupuncture? Are you going to use needles? You need to have some pre-prepared responses that you've practiced so that you can sound very smooth, very polished, and you don't have to stop and try to think up an answer on the spot. The idea is that you can focus on them. You can focus on their issues and not have to stammer over your words and not have to over-explain. A brief explanation is often the best explanation. So next, when you start the exam, you enter the patient data into AcuGraph and ask them for their, obviously first name, last name, date of birth, gender, but ask them for their phone and email and explain that the email is so you can send their report and the phone is just so you can text a single thank you and let them know. Yeah, I'm going to text you just to thank you for coming to the booth. You'll only get one text from me. And once you limit it like that, then most often they'll give you their phone. And it's clearly so you can follow up. You don't need to be shy about that. They need to know you're going to follow up because you're about to give them a free exam. It's obvious and equitable that they should be willing to let you follow up on that exam. And if they're not willing, then it's okay to dismiss them, honestly. Okay, you use the screening mode. Here's where it's found in AcuGraph. On the new exam screen, you go to the screening tab. It's going to only measure the hands, not the hands and feet. It's faster that way. People don't have to take their shoes and socks off, and it's generally a better experience. Plus, because it's half an exam, it gives you the opportunity to invite them in for the full exam. As you conduct the test, you want to ask questions. I've seen this enough times. I know that the first thing they want to do is they want to get in the chair and get situated and get ready. And then you need to break the ice because right now they're basically just saying, here's my body, test me. And unless you ask questions, half of them will just remain silent. So ask questions. And then you've got to follow up with further questions. One of my favorite questions to ask is, so what brings you in today? Do you have a specific health problem that you'd like to work on? A lot of people are going to say no, because they don't want to talk about their health problems. Some will say, yeah, they'll go right into it. Oh, I get these headaches. Oh, I've got this back pain, whatever it is. For the folks that say no, then don't let that be the end of the conversation. Follow up and say, well, great. If there was one thing that you wanted to do to improve your health or the way your body functions, what would it be? Now they have to answer. There is no yes, no here. If there was one thing, hypothetically speaking, I know there's nothing at all wrong with you and you're just sitting here because you're bored, but if there was one thing, what would it be? Oh, well, I could sleep better, honestly. Then they'll open up, then you can talk. But the point is, keep the conversation going and make it about them. When you're graphing them, you're literally sitting face to face, eye to eye, undivided attention for 2 or 3 minutes. And you've got that 2 or 3 minutes to show that you're empathetic, that you care, that you understand. And if they'll tell you about their problems, then you need to reinforce 2 things. Number 1, I understand that problem. And number 2, I think I can help. And here's why. Those are the 2 things. Now, if you really can't help, you need to be honest and tell them that. But since acupuncture can help with almost everything, you need to reinforce, I understand your problem and I think I can help. You show you understand the problem by explaining the graph. Talk about the meanings of the different colors. You can click on the bars in the affected meridians to show the locations. You can say, hey, look at where this runs. What's going on right here? See how this goes through your shoulder? What's going on with your shoulder up there? And you control the conversation by asking questions. As you ask questions, you continue the engagement. Ultimately, you want to transition to the appointment. Whoops. Sorry. Problem with the computer. Here we go. So We've looked at your graph. We've looked at half your meridians. It's clear that we need to see the whole picture so that we can best tell you how we're going to help this. I've set aside 2 days next week to do complete exams in my office. And if you're going to do those exams for free, say, look, no charge. I just need to pick a time for you to come in. We'll do the full exam and we'll talk about whether this is the right fit for you. We'll talk about how we can help. It's a very, very small commitment. We call it a micro commitment you're asking people for. The first micro commitment was give me your information, your email, your phone. That was so they could get the exam. Now you're asking for a micro commitment, take an appointment time so that you can come in and you're going to give them a full evaluation at no charge. The micro commitments are the ways that step by step by step, they more fully commit to becoming your patient. Obviously, walking up and asking them to be your patient right then is like asking someone to marry you on the first date. It's not going to work that way. It goes through a series of micro commitments that build trust. So the micro commitment is I've set aside these 2 days. Which day is better for you? I've got openings Tuesday or Thursday. And if cost is an issue, make it clear, no charge. If you are going to charge, make it something very small and symbolic. $10, it reserves your spot on my calendar for the day. And if you decide to continue and we're going to help you with this, the $10 goes directly towards your treatment. If you decide not to continue, at least you'll know exactly what's going on, and $10 is all it's ever going to cost. So if you decide that you're going to charge, that does produce a larger commitment because now they've paid money. They're more likely to show up. If you decide not to charge because you don't want to deal with taking money at the booth, then that's fine. Make it free, make it a micro commitment. You'll still have a great turnout rate. And so then just ask, morning or evening, Tuesday or Thursday, narrow it down, get them on the books, pass them off to your assistant who's now going to make the appointment, going to give them the card or the brochure, the flyer that shows them how to get to your office. Make sure everything's firmed up, and we'll see them next Tuesday. Remember, believe in your ability to help. Be unwavering in setting the appointment. Don't let them leave your booth until they've given you a firm no. Because if you're wishy-washy, then everything you've just done up to this point is wasted. Don't be wishy-washy. I've set aside these times. I'd like you to come in. Let's get this taken care of for you. Be specific about it. Now, a couple of traps, things to avoid when trying to get people to come to your booth. Hey, you want to try a test? No, nobody likes tests. What's a better way to say that? How about, would you like to, not even would you like, how about, have you had your meridians evaluated yet? Or how's the energy flow in your body? Or if it's specific to a problem, like it's an athletic type of a event, for example, then you're going to talk about athletics. But the point is, what you have at your booth should already be enough to engage or to interrupt and to engage people so that they will want to talk to you. Would you like to come into my office for an exam? That's a bad way to ask. It's yes or no response. Don't do that. I've set aside these 2 days next week to do full evaluations of people I think I can help. Which day is better for you? Just like that. Be confident, ask it, trust that you really are offering them something valuable and helpful, and then wait for them to make to give you the response. And if they try to hedge and say, oh, well, I don't know, I'm really busy, then you need to be ready to respond to that. Oh, I understand. I'm really busy too. That's why I've set these aside, but I have evening appointments. What would be better? And stick with it, that you desperately want to help them, and you'll do whatever you have to do to get them the help they need. If they feel that from you and experience that from you, they're going to trust you, and you're much more likely to get an appointment. Okay, here's one. I'd like to see what's blocking your energy. It's not about what I want. Make it always about them. Make it always about, would you like to understand better why you're having this issue? I think I can tell you. Would you like to take a look? rather than here's what I want. Make it about what they want. Oh, and then the last one was talking too much. You don't need to talk about chi, chakras, needles. You don't need to discuss how you treat people. Just discuss your results. The only exception to that rule is if people are really, really freaked out about needles, then let them know, oh, hey, there's a lot of ways we treat that don't involve needles at all. So you have nothing to worry about. And leave it at that. Let it go. Focus on results. So, summary of the health fair success formula. Number one, who do you want to attract? Choose the right event for them. Be intentional about your booth display. Plan ahead, spend some money, make an effective display. If you're going to go spend the time doing this, then go all the way, make it work. Plan your approach. What is the action you want people to take? Is it realistic? Is it attainable? Align everything else with that single goal. And hopefully that single goal is that you want people to make an appointment to come see you at your office. Everything else should align and dovetail into that goal. Remember the 4-step process. Interrupt. That can be wild, eye-catching, outlandish. The more different it is, the more unusual it is, the more it interrupts. Attention means that it's pertinent to them. Engagement means that there's a message they want to hear. And action means that they're willing to sit down, spend the time, take the action, and go on to the next step. Make the appointment. Is your messaging conveying what your patients need to know and what they care most about? Is it pertinent to them? Are your talking points prepared? Do you know what you're going to say to people? Do you have answers to all the common questions at the ready? Will the flow of your booth work? Do you have an assistant, somebody to help you, to take the appointments, to herd people through and to manage the lines? And then at the end of the day, what do you need to walk out with? Hopefully what you need to walk out with is a full appointment book, which means you have to have an appointment book there and you have to be specific and intentional about making appointments. The goal, and you should envision this, the end of the day, when you take down your display and you go home, you've got 10, 20, 30 people committed to come see you next week. It's going to be a great week. Let me tell you, that's when it gets fun. Okay, a couple quick testimonials. David Scott, you asked about my experience with AcuGraph at a live event. 8 months ago, I decided to go to a live event and do a screening like you described. I don't know how many people I screened, but the next week I saw 15 new patients in my office. I like to see them twice a week at the beginning. So in an instant, I added 30 hours a week to my schedule. After a month, I transitioned many of them to weekly visits, but they felt so much better they brought in their family and friends. I don't mean to complain, but I'm nearing retirement and hadn't planned on working this hard. That one event has kept my practice full for almost a year now. Maybe things will calm down and I'll do another one this fall. Complain all you want, but he's going to do it again. Here's another one. I want to thank you for your expertise. I read your post just before going to a health fair a couple of weekends ago and followed your advice. I have to tell you, your statistics were a little off. I booked 40 new patients out of about 75 screenings, and 39 of the 40 showed up. I've been wanting to share this with you for the last few weeks. I've just been too busy, thanks to you and AcuGraph. Thanks so much. And then one more. 2 weeks ago, I took AcuGraph to a health fair. It was 90 degrees here in South Florida, and we still screened over 33 people and set 15 appointments in the office for the complete exam. 12 of them kept their appointment. 6 months later, 3 of them are still regular patients that I'm seeing weekly. Those are the sorts of stories we hear all the time. One last one. This one's my favorite because it's so over the top. A couple of years ago, we were down in San Diego, and we asked about people that did health fairs with AcuGraph. And we had one person raise her hand. She was a new graduate. She was just starting a practice. English was not her first language. And so this was, getting herself out there and doing this. This was a big step. But whatever she did, it was amazing because she booked over 70 new patients. And it was disastrously hard for her to keep up. She immediately had to hire another acupuncturist just to help run the practice and help with the patient load. Now, your mileage may vary. The results obtained are entirely dependent on a lot of factors, but I want you to know that if she can get out there and get over 70 new patients and other people can get 10, 15, 20, 30 new patients, it's entirely realistic to expect that you can as well. So with that in mind, you can, of course, find out more information from us at AcuGraph.com. We have live chat. You can call us. We're always glad to talk. And hopefully you've gleaned some things that you can take with you out into the world and do this. But more importantly, hopefully you have gotten the idea that you don't have to be scared of doing live events, that if you follow a process, it really does work. And we are here to help. So, that was a long monologue. I'm ready to answer questions or talk about anything anybody wants to bring up. I'm going to start by looking through these in the chat. Yes, I remember the yellow pages. WIIFM. What's that?
That's when you were talking about cars, what they wanted in their cars.
Yeah. Is there a calendar or scheduler in the works to be integrated into AcuGraph? Jared Adlington asked that. You know, we talked about that at one point. Ultimately, right now, we are not planning to do that simply because we're really trying to, oh, what's in it for me? There it is. That's what Charles was talking about, WIIFM. What's in it for me? Thank you, Charles. Great point. Anyway, we've talked about over the years, we've gone back and forth about, hey, should we add scheduling to AcuGraph? Should we add billing? Should we add insurance billing, inventory control? Should we add checkout and being able to pay for things at point of sale? And there's a lot of cool bells and whistles, but then all of a sudden AcuGraph is no longer AcuGraph. Instead, it's a practice management suite. And really, we're trying to keep AcuGraph focused on doing one thing and doing it exceptionally well, instead of trying to do everything and maybe not do anything particularly well. So long story short, right now, we're not planning to add a calendar or scheduling. Maybe that'll change in the future, but good question. Thanks, Jared. Other questions or comments, thoughts, feel free to put it in the chat or feel free to unmute your mic and ask or share. I'd be curious if there's anyone here who's gone and done this who'd be willing to share their results. Good or bad, I'd like to know.
Adrian, really quickly, and I have to run here, and this is for Kimberly too. I had an interesting experience Monday. I've been out of the office for quite a while due to recovering from surgery, and I'm just back now full time. And Monday I had 2 new patients. And to make a long story short, the first patient I didn't use AcuGraph with, and that's a long story. Second patient, which was in the new patient, which was in the afternoon, I did. The first new patient didn't reschedule. The second new patient has already committed to a package plan and is due in here in just about 5 minutes. So that's the tale of 2 patients, so to speak.
Oh, wow. Love it. Love it. And I think that maybe that's a testimony to the idea that AcuGraph can translate what's intangible going on in their meridians into something tangible that they can understand and affects their life.
Yep.
That's very cool. Thanks, Jared. Appreciate that.
Hey, Adrian, I wanted to chime in. And it kind of bounces off of what Jared was just talking about. When the patient sits down, or when the prospective patient sits down in front of you, you've done all the right things, you've got something that's new, you've got something that's different, you've got something that's exciting. And when they sit down with you, I look at this as an incredible opportunity. One, they're sitting down next to me and I get to share a different perspective of acupuncture that no one else has shared with them. I get that 3 to 5 minutes while they're sitting at my booth, I get to touch them because I'm touching them because I'm graphing them, right? So I'm making a touching energetic connection. I am able to graph just their upper body pathways. There's so much information in the upper body pathways to be able to talk to that patient about how acupuncture might help them. If they're talking about they have digestive issues and you click on the small intestine pathway, you can show them the muscular pathway, you can show them internally how all of that affects. And it is a game changer when you can visually show them a way that you can help them because you understand something different than anybody else out there understands. You're showing them the acupuncture pathways in the body related to muscles, related to internal organs. And that's when you can have that little bit of a heart-to-heart conversation. So you get that 3 to 5 minutes, possibly longer while you're sitting at the booth. And then next, then they get to come to your clinic and they get a real look of who you are and what you have to offer and what your clinic is like. So it just goes down the line. You also always want to get their email address, because even if I typically print a report and hand it to the patient, but that email address, I already know they are interested somewhat in acupuncture because they sat at my booth. That email address, I tell them, I'm going to email you this report afterwards with some more information. And so I'm going to send them an email. Now they're on my email list. They'll remember you later. They'll remember because they sat at your booth, because they've already shown interest. Now you have their email address. And if you're doing email marketing, what happens at that booth extends further because you have something to share. So AcuGraph, when I'm talking about AcuGraph, oftentimes that very first time I'm showing them the muscular pathways, because most people, it's the upper body pathways. You've got the triple energizer, the small intestine, the large intestine pathways that all relate to headaches, shoulder pain. Almost everybody has some type of upper body tension. Or you've got the lung and maybe they're a smoker, and you've got heart and pericardium and maybe they have anxiety. So you have multiple things that you can talk about. The other thing that I wanted to share was two things. I believe it or not, there was a time before AcuGraph where I was an acupuncturist. I've been an acupuncturist for a very long time with Meridia Technology, but there was that first year, that first out of school, when I didn't have any patients and I was trying to build a practice. So what did I do? I bravely went to a health fair. And what did I put on the table? Are you ready for this? I had oranges and zucchinis with needles poking into them because I wanted to show them my needles. And I had the naked Chinese guy, the plastic naked Chinese guy, and I had business cards, and I had a drawing. I got no patients, 0 patients out of that experience. I mean, who wants to come? People walk by and go, ooh, let me see those needles. Ooh, I hate needles. That's scary. And they walked away. But I didn't have anything to offer. I've done booth after booth after booth through the years, not only obviously for acupuncturists, but also to bring in new patients. And it's a game changer when you have a way to show yourself as someone different and unique, and you're showing them that you understand what's going on in their body. One more story. I went to a booth, I did an acupuncture convention in Florida. And one year, because we had a booth, because we did a demonstration, there was this woman who was wanting to make a change in her clinic, and she bought into AcuGraph. And her husband came and he says, oh yes, this is great. And he did the marketing for them. And he says, yeah, you'll need to do these events and you'll need to do these things. Well, the next year I was sitting under a cabana by a pool because it's Florida and it was hot. And this couple comes up to me and they said, do you remember me? And they sat down and they said, Dr. Kimberly, everything changed in the last year because we bought AcuGraph. We bought AcuGraph. We began doing health fairs and we completely changed our clinic. So I've seen it work for myself. I've seen it work for other people. And I love to hear the stories of patients who tell you how amazing our AcuGraph is because they get it. They see that something is different. I'll stop.
No, that's awesome. I love it. And I hadn't heard the story about the zucchinis and oranges, Kimberly. That's great. And it's what a perfect illustration.
I am going to share a link over here I did pull out my phone and I took a video of the woman telling me her story of how everything had changed. So I found an old blog post where that video is. So I'm going to pop it over here in the comments.
Cool. Okay. Let's see, more questions then. Somebody says, if we don't continue the yearly fee, will the AcuGraph stop working? You'll still have access to all of your notes, all of your information, all of that remains accessible. You won't be able to do new exams or add new patients to AcuGraph if you're not on the maintenance plan, keeping it up to date. But it will continue to function in a read-only mode. Anne, you have a question. Go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you for doing this. I love your live sessions. So my question is, I live up in the mountains and I'm getting ready to schedule a presentation for an audience. And I can't always rely on internet and Wi-Fi in the locations where I may be giving the presentation. Mm-hmm. So have you ever taken like the AcuGraph devices with the, like not really done the processes, but take pictures of the graphs and show what a model would look like and say, well, this is a case and, this is what this what graph shows, and these are symptoms that could show up with a patient and that sort of thing, without actually having it hooked up, without a demonstration? I mean, could that be successful at all?
Yes, it could, but I think that really it's based on the premise that you need Wi-Fi for AcuGraph to work, and that's not true at all. AcuGraph will run just fine with no Wi-Fi, no internet at all. You can turn off the Wi-Fi on your computer, go do your demonstration, graph people, everything will function perfectly. And then when you get back to Wi-Fi, everything will synchronize with your patient database.
Okay.
So right. Yeah, don't even worry about it. Go do it.
So just my laptop without any Wi-Fi connection, and exactly. So the fact that I've loaded it with the updated onto the laptop, it'll work.
Yeah, AcuGraph lives on your computer. So you take your laptop with you and you're good.
Hey, Anne, here's how you practice.
Okay.
Open up your AcuGraph, turn off your internet and graph, and open it up and look and poke your way around. It's still all there.
So if I had a patient and I didn't want to be connected to internet in my own office, I could still be doing it and do the whole graph and show them, and then say, okay, when you get home, you'll have the email with all the reports that I've just walked you through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It would all be there.
You could turn Wi-Fi back on after they leave, and then you could, email it and whatever else. Yeah, you bet.
It just uploads to the cloud. Oh, wow. I'm glad I asked that question. That makes life so much easier for me.
I'm glad you did too. And that's important because when you go to a screening event, chances are you may not have Wi-Fi, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, cool.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. We have a question. Can a patient book an appointment on AcuGraph? It doesn't do appointments. So have a physical book there and write people's name. Let them see you write their name in the appointment book so that they know they're committed. And then when you get back to your office, put it in whatever electronic system you use. But that's the way to handle booking appointments. And then there, Kimberly, you put up that link. Thank you for that. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Oh, Hetty says, I'm finding that a very high percentage of my new patients sign up for packages after the second graphing when I go over the report of findings and treatment. Very cool, Hetty. I'm glad to hear that. Ultimately, if you can show something has changed from the first visit to the second, it's super convincing, isn't it? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It's been an absolute blast for me to be able to present all this. You've been wonderful to listen to it. I know it was a bit like drinking from a fire hose, but hopefully you got some good tips today. If there's anything at all we can do, don't hesitate to reach out in the AcuGraph user group on Facebook, or reach out to us at acugraph.com by chat, by email. We're here to help. Meanwhile, get out there, get after it, and get those practices full. And we will see you next time. Thanks, everybody.